Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. About 5 years ago, we reviewed well, it wasn't 5 years ago we reviewed, but their album came out 5 years ago.
That's right.
We reviewed RX Bandits' Mandala, and have been eagerly, that was a huge change in sound for the band. We've been eagerly awaiting their next record, and we've been waiting year after year after year, and it's finally here, Gemini, Her Majesty, where we loved Mandala because it was this band, RX Bandits, a California-based progressive rock band with ska-based roots and reggae in their sound and all that stuff. Had really gone just pure like modern progressive rock in like the vein of kind of like a more upbeat guitar-driven Thursday or
Mars Volta.
Mars Volta, yeah, that's a great example. And so we're really interested to see had they made that change with Mandala. Now where are they going to go next? Gemini, Her Majesty is here. 5 years later, Tom, what is your take on Gemini, Her Majesty, and the sound of this album?
Sure, well, that's the first thing definitely to address is just the sound changes, because this is a band who, historically, they've gone through a lot of sound changes. And you touched on a lot of that just now. I mean, going from the kind of ska roots that they had back in the 90s, and then a lot of lineup changes really forced them to adapt into something different. They lost the horn section, but they've got a beast of a guitar section in Troy and Embry. So they do a fantastic job of just weaving together these complex lead guitar lines, and the prog aspect comes in with a lot of the time signature changes and even just rhythmic elements. Even if they're doing a kind of a 4/4, 3/4 time signature, they just rhythmically go crazy. The drummer is nuts. I mean, for every angle. I mean, they have their prog bases covered. Let's face it.
A lot of Rush influence. You can hear it throughout their music. I just hear a strong Rush, Led Zeppelin, like Houses of the Holy based influence. Especially, there's a couple songs on here that sound straight out of Led Zeppelin's Houses of the Holy, specifically track 7, Will You Be Tomorrow.
Oh, for sure. A little spacier.
No quarter.
Absolutely. Another one I'd say is The Police, because they kind of took a prog. They kind of took They kind of took a prog rock sound, incorporated some of those reggae elements, and you can tell that comes out a lot in their sound. But at the same time, what I think is really neat about what RX Bandits are doing, specifically on this album, more so than their past work, is it's presented to be a lot, dare I say, prettier, I would say.
Pretty is a good word for it.
It's very melodic.
Yeah.
Embry's vocals are very just, they're accessible, for sure. And I don't say that in a bad way. I almost think of like Brandon Boyd from Incubus, stuff like that.
Incubus is kind of a really good comparison as far as the vocals are concerned. And really the general appeal of this album has the same appeal as Incubus, which I think just turns off a lot of people. Because that whole style of music, A, it's a little bit campy nowadays, and B, it's over 10 to 15 years old. Like that was really popular in the early 2000s, and here we are in the mid 2010s, and RX Bandits is adopting this sound. Now, what I would say to that criticism is I think that you have to look deeper than a lot of that. A lot of Incubus's music had, just inherent flaws in it, and a lot of the songwriting and the vocals and the lyrical approaches, there was a lot of positive qualities too. If you were to do the same sort of comparison to into RX Bandits' more recent sounds on Mandala and Gemini, Her Majesty, I think you would find a lot more just quality all the way around. The vocals, as Tom was saying, the vocals are really well presented, and the instrumentation is top-notch, but furthermore, the songwriting is what makes Gemini, Her Majesty really a record that separates itself from all those other artists and influences that we talk about. And in this day and age, a band to do a style that has been done, let's just dare say, a lot, it is very important that they separate themselves through songwriting, and I feel like that RX Bandits clearly have the talent to do that and demonstrate that, in my opinion, on the front half of this album very well.
Absolutely. And it comes down to those two big things I would sum up. Instrumental acumen, these guys are masters at what they play and they work well together. And then songwriting. These are not just bland pop structured tracks. There's some choruses in there for sure, but there are a lot of great breakdowns, things to mix it up. One track that I'd point out in particular, track 6, G2G, my favorite track on the album. I noticed that you didn't pick that one. I always love it when you don't pick my favorite track.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I always feel insulted. I get pissed off. Oh, okay. I have my Tom Voodoo doll.
Throw darts at my face on a dartboard or something.
Yeah, I've done that before. Now, the Tom Voodoo doll, though, that's been my new thing lately.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
I've been cutting off your appendages lately. So
they're all still here. So
you might get in a car accident on the way home. Just watch out for that.
Well, you're doing all the work posting this video.
Damn right.
If you see this video, then it means I made it. Okay, so no worries there. But anyway,
what a tangent.
That track G2G, I love. And in the middle of the track, it just drifts off into this whole, pretty much a new song. It gets a little more ambient, a little more moody, and I love it when songs do that. If you look back at some of my favorite tracks that over the last few years, I tend to gravitate towards songs that shift, that have like sections to them or halves, where they really can make what feels like two songs blend together seamlessly, and I love to see bands doing that. I think RX Bandits pulled it off here. Now, you mentioned a few minutes ago, I think a key point was you mentioned they really succeed on certain parts of this on the first half of the album.
I do. I did say that. And I think that the second half, it's not necessarily bad music. I think it's just kind of an effect of RX Bandits had played their entire hand at that point. Now, I really feel like, you know, excluding the first track, which is an introduction track, only a minute long or so, they really just they come out just hitting home runs. The first track, Ruby Cumulous, or the first real track, track 2, Ruby Cumulous, is my favorite track on the album. It is one of your track picks, and I just think that is just one of the more amazing songs I've heard come out this year. It just has a lot of really good melody, really great guitar work, which is something that I'm always always a fan of. And so that song just really set a good tone, set a good thesis statement for the rest of the record. They followed that up with tracks 3, Wide Open, and track 4, Stargazer, both very poppy tracks. And I'd say the poppiest track on the album is clearly Wide Open, and Stargazer is up there with it. Very much adhering to a traditional pop structure, but where they dominate here is the fact that they just write fantastic choruses. The chorus is catchy, and it will not leave my head. I mean, I can clearly, you know, think of it now, and I'm going to listen to it in my head for the rest of the night, and that takes good songwriting to do that. From there, Fire to the Ocean, I didn't feel like was nearly as original, kind of a generic sounding, and there was a couple tracks on the back half, while their song titles are interesting, as you pointed out, maybe a little bit of a Deerhoof influence there. Meow Meow Space Tiger, 1995, Penguin Marlon Brando. Interesting song titles, less interesting songs, just from the standpoint that I think that they had played a lot of the cards. They had done a lot of the things that they're doing in those songs earlier on the album. That, to me, is never the best sign. Usually leads to some track disparity, and something that I typically don't like.
And I think that's where there's a little bit of difference between us, because, well, certainly Ruby Cumulous and Wide Open, I will not disagree, are two of the best tracks on this album, for sure. I actually found myself enjoying, in particular, Meow Meow Space Tiger and Penguin Marlon Brando quite a bit. I didn't pick them as tracks, but for me, I think that the weakest this album gets is still a fairly high bar. I think that for you, that bar is just a little bit lower as the minimum. But then I also really like the closing track, Future Buddy. That was a little bit more of an uplifting, kind of more poppier song, but I talked to our friend Mike, who's the guy who got us into RX Bandits. He's been listening to them since the early to mid-2000s, and he was kind of iffy on this album. And in particular, he pointed out to me, I hate at the end of the album when he counts out the time signature as it's going along. And I could see why that would bother someone, especially since Mike's a drummer. But from my perspective, I actually really liked that, because I thought it worked in some kind of nice melody. It really got stuck in my head, and I thought it was just a neat way to end the album. So overall, what really made this album succeed in my ears is that you had some really highlight tracks, just killer highlights on this album. But for me, they were spread out enough that even the weaker tracks still helped to make this a cohesive listen, and something that I wanted to come back to and never got bored while I listened to it.
Now, I did tend to think that this is a bit more hit or miss. Like, I really keyed in on certain tracks and liked those tracks, and the rest of the album I thought was not up to the same level. But the tracks that were good did keep me coming back to the album, which I think boosted my score overall. So if there was one thing, and maybe it's just that, you know, a difference in opinion, and probably, I mean, that's what music listening is, let's be real here. But maybe if those tracks, you know, caught my attention a little more, I would have liked this album more in the whole. I am going to go 77 on this record.
I'm going to go 84.
Okay, so that puts us at an 81, something that we would recommend to you guys, and dare I say, even put on our loved list. Must-listen record here. Gemini, Her Majesty by RX Bandits. If you've listened to this record, we'd love to hear your thoughts, and if not, shame on you, go listen to it. Let us know your thoughts at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. Now, as always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and let Tom or myself know if there's any records you'd like to see us review on this channel. I am Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.